The rain tapped gently against the attic window as Aisha sat curled in a corner, her thin shawl barely shielding her from the cold. The attic had been her home for as long as she could remember, a dusty, cramped space filled with forgotten furniture and broken memories. It wasn't always like this. There was a time when the house was filled with warmth and laughter, back when her parents were alive, but those days felt like a distant dream. Aisha had been only 6 when tragedy struck. Her mother had passed away first, her gentle hands and warm embrace taken away by a sudden illness. Her father, once a strong and kind-hearted man, had followed soon after, leaving her alone in a world that no longer felt safe. In his absence, her stepmother Farida took over the household. At first, there had been promises of care, of love, but those words quickly turned to ash. The grand house, with its tall marble pillars and golden chandeliers, was nothing less than a palace, yet Aisha was treated as if she belonged to the lowest ranks of society. She was not permitted to enjoy its luxuries. Instead, she was confined to the attic, her existence acknowledged only when there was work to be done. The servants, though sympathetic, dared not speak out against Farida's rule. Her stepsisters, Rida and Saira, mirrored their mother's cruelty, delighting in making Aisha's life miserable. From sunrise to sunset, she worked tirelessly, scrubbing floors until her fingers bled, cooking meals she was never allowed to eat, washing clothes that were finer than anything she had ever worn. Every mistake, no matter how small, earned her harsh words or even a slap. And yet, Aisha did not let bitterness take root in her heart. She clung to hope the way one clings to light in a dark tunnel. When she finished her chores, she would steal away to the attic, her only sanctuary, and lose herself in the pages of old books she had found abandoned in the storeroom. They were her only escape, her only connection to a world beyond servitude. She dreamed of a future where she was free, where she was loved, where she was more than just a servant in her own home. But dreams were fragile things, and in the harsh reality of her life, they felt impossible. She did not know that soon, everything would change. Hidden deep within the walls of the house, a secret waited, one that would shatter the chains binding her and reveal a truth that had been buried for years, a truth that would finally set her free. The first rays of dawn barely touched the sky when Aisha's day began. She was always the first to wake, slipping out of the thin, tattered blanket that barely kept her warm at night. There was no time to stretch or rest. If she wasn't downstairs before her stepmother woke up, there would be consequences. She moved swiftly, knowing that hesitation would only bring trouble. First, she fetched water from the well at the far end of the estate, the heavy buckets digging into her small hands. Then came the cleaning, the floors, the windows, the endless dusting of expensive furniture that she was never allowed to touch otherwise. She scrubbed until her fingers ached, until her knees burned from kneeling for hours. By the time breakfast was ready, the house had come alive with the sounds of her stepmother and stepsisters preparing for the day. Aisha stood silently in the kitchen, watching as they enjoyed the meal she had prepared: golden parathas, fresh fruit, sweet chai. Her stomach growled, but she knew better than to ask for food. If there were leftovers, she would get a few crumbs. If not, she would have to wait until night, hoping to find something to eat. Her stepmother Farida rarely spoke to her unless it was to scold or mock her. "You're so slow, Aisha," she sneered that morning as Aisha wiped the table. "Even the servants do better work than you." Her stepsisters Rida and Saira laughed, their voices sharp like broken glass. "She's not even a servant, Mama," Saira said, twirling a strand of her glossy hair. "She's worse. At least the servants get paid." The words stung, but Aisha kept her head down. She had learned long ago that answering back would only bring more cruelty. Instead, she focused on her work, washing piles of dishes, ironing delicate silks, running errands across the estate. By afternoon, exhaustion threatened to overtake her, but there was still more to do. Evenings were the worst. After dinner, when her stepfamily retired to their lavish rooms, Aisha was left to clean up the mess. The kitchen reeked of rich spices, but she wasn't allowed to taste a bite. She worked in silence, her limbs aching, her stomach empty, her heart heavier than ever. When at last her duties were done, she climbed up the narrow attic stairs, the only place in the house that truly belonged to her. There, under the dim light of an old lantern, she reached for her most treasured possessions, faded books with torn covers hidden beneath a loose wooden plank. They were her escape, her only window to a world where kindness and adventure existed. As she turned the pages, she imagined a life where she was free, where she was loved, where she wasn't just an unwanted girl locked away in an attic. But dreams were just dreams, and no matter how much she longed for change, she had no idea if it would ever come. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the dusty attic as Aisha pushed aside an old wooden trunk. She had been sent to clean the forgotten room, a place no one in the house cared for, except when they needed her to clear away the dust. Coughing softly as a cloud of it rose around her, she knelt to wipe the floor, her tired fingers moving mechanically over the rough surface. As she reached for a loose wooden plank near the corner, something caught her eye. The edge of a yellowed paper peeked out from underneath. Frowning, she carefully pulled at it, her heart quickening when she realized it was an envelope, old, delicate, and sealed with a broken wax stamp. Her name was written across it in elegant, flowing script. Aisha. She froze. No one ever wrote to her. No one even acknowledged her as someone worth writing to. The realization that this letter had been here for years, hidden away from her, sent a chill down her spine. Who had left it here? And why had she never seen it before? Hands trembling, she tore the envelope open, her breath shallow as she unfolded the letter inside. The paper was fragile, its edges worn with time, but the words were clear, written in the same elegant handwriting. My dearest Aisha, if you are reading this, it means that something has gone terribly wrong. I had hoped to tell you this in person, to keep you safe and by my side, but fate has taken a cruel turn. Aisha's heart pounded. The words felt familiar yet foreign, as if they belonged to a story she had never been told. You are not alone, my child. You were never meant to be treated this way. There is something that rightfully belongs to you, something that has been kept from you. Trust no one in that house. When the time comes, seek out the truth. The letter was unsigned, but deep inside, Aisha already knew. This was from her father. Tears blurred her vision as she traced the ink with her fingers. Had he known what would happen to her? Had he suspected that Farida would take everything away from her? If this letter had reached her earlier, how different would her life have been? 1,000 questions filled her mind, but one stood above all. What was the truth that had been hidden from her? Her stepmother had stolen more than just her happiness. She had stolen her past, her identity. But now Aisha had something she had never possessed before. A clue, a spark of hope. Clutching the letter to her chest, she knew she could not let it go. Whatever secrets lay buried in her father's words, she would find them. She had spent years in silence, believing she had no choice. But now, for the first time, she dared to hope that her story was not yet over. Aisha's hands shook as she turned the letter over, searching for more. Her heart pounded against her ribs, each beat echoing in the silence of the attic. She read the words again, slowly this time, as if trying to etch them into her soul. There is something that rightfully belongs to you. Trust no one in that house. Seek out the truth. She inhaled sharply, a wave of emotions crashing over her. This letter was more than just a message from her father. It was proof that something had been taken from her. But what? And who had helped hide it? Then she noticed something else. Beneath the main letter, there was another sheet of paper folded tightly. She carefully unfolded it, her eyes widening as she took in its contents. It was a legal document, an official record with a seal that had faded over time but was still visible. Her breath hitched as she read, "This is to certify that Aisha, daughter of Rehan Malik, is the sole heir to the Malik estate and all associated wealth. In the event of unforeseen circumstances, she is to be placed under the care of a trusted guardian, Mr. Ibrahim Dar." Her mind spun. The Malik estate, wealth, a guardian. None of this made sense. She had been told her parents had left her with nothing, that she was a burden, a useless orphan who should be grateful for a roof over her head. But this document said otherwise. She clenched her fists. Her stepmother had lied. Farida had known all along. She had stolen Aisha's rightful inheritance and forced her into servitude while living in the house that should have belonged to her. A rush of anger surged through her, hotter than anything she had ever felt. The years of cruelty, the hunger, the insults, it had all been for this. To keep her in the dark, to ensure she never found out who she truly was. She looked at the letter again. Mr. Ibrahim Dar, a name she had never heard before. If he was meant to be her guardian, why had he never come for her? Had Farida kept him away too? Was he even still alive? Aisha's mind raced with questions, but one thing was clear. She could not let this go. She had to find out the truth, to uncover everything that had been stolen from her. For the first time in years, she felt something she thought she had lost. Power. Her stepmother had tried to erase her past, to break her spirit. But she had failed. Aisha would not remain a prisoner in this house any longer. She would find Ibrahim Dar. She would reclaim what was hers. And when the time came, Farida and her daughters would finally face the truth they had so desperately tried to bury. Aisha sat in the dimly lit attic, the letter clenched tightly in her hands. The truth had been hidden from her for years, buried beneath lies and cruelty. But now she knew. She was not just an unwanted orphan forced to serve a family that despised her. She was the rightful heir to everything they had stolen. She could not stay here any longer. If Farida discovered she had found the letter, she would destroy it. The thought sent a shiver down her spine. She had to leave. But how? Aisha's mind raced through possibilities. She had no money, no allies, and no idea where to find Ibrahim Dar. Running blindly into the world without a plan would be foolish. If Farida realized she was gone too soon, she might send someone after her. She needed time, and most importantly, she needed to be careful. Taking a deep breath, she reached for a small cloth bag she kept hidden beneath a loose floorboard. It wasn't much, just an old shawl, a few coins she had secretly saved over the years, and a worn-out notebook where she had scribbled her thoughts in stolen moments of peace. Carefully, she folded the letter and tucked it into the notebook, ensuring it was safe. This was her proof, her key to a new life. Over the next few days, she moved cautiously, gathering small things she might need, a little food wrapped in cloth, a flask of water, an extra pair of worn-out shoes. She avoided drawing attention, keeping her head down as she completed her chores, all while mapping out the best way to leave without being noticed. But doubt crept into her mind. Should she leave in silence, slipping away like a shadow in the night? Or should she confront her stepmother and let her know she had lost? The thought of standing before Farida, of watching the shock and fear in her eyes as she revealed the truth, was tempting. She had spent years being treated as nothing, and now she had the power to shake the foundations of this house. But would it be worth the risk? Farida was cruel, unpredictable. If she sensed even a hint of rebellion, she would lock Aisha away, take the letter, and ensure she never saw the outside world again. The risk was too great. She would leave quietly. She would disappear like a whisper, and when she returned, it would be on her terms. She would come back not as a servant, but as the true heir, and when that day came, Farida would have no place to hide. That night, as the house fell into silence, Aisha stood by the attic window, looking out at the world beyond. She had spent her whole life trapped in this house, believing she had nowhere else to go. Tomorrow, she would prove herself wrong. Aisha moved through the darkened hallways, her heart pounding in her chest. The house was silent, the only sound the occasional creak of the wooden floor beneath her feet. She clutched the small cloth bag against her chest, the letter tucked safely inside. She was so close, just a few more steps, and she would be free. But as she reached the front door, a voice cut through the darkness like a blade. "And where do you think you're going?" Aisha froze. A lantern flickered to life, casting an eerie glow across the foyer. Her stepmother, Farida, stood at the top of the staircase, her sharp eyes glinting with suspicion. Behind her, Rida and Saira peered down, their faces twisted with amusement. Aisha tightened her grip on the bag. She had prepared for everything, except this. "I asked you a question," Farida said, descending the stairs slowly, each step deliberate, menacing. "Are you sneaking out like a little thief?" Aisha lifted her chin. For years she had bowed her head, swallowed her pain, accepted her fate, but not tonight. "I'm leaving," she said, her voice steady despite the fear clawing at her throat. Farida let out a cold laugh. "Leaving? And where will you go? You have nothing, no one." Aisha's fingers curled around the strap of her bag. "I know the truth," Farida's smile faltered. "What did you say?" Aisha took a step forward. "I know everything. My father left me an inheritance, a home, a life that you stole from me. And I know about Ibrahim Dar." A sharp intake of breath from Rida, a flicker of fear in Saira's eyes. For the first time Aisha saw it, the panic, the realization that their control over her was slipping away. Farida's expression darkened. "You don't know what you're talking about." Aisha reached into her bag, pulling out the letter. "I have proof." Before she could react, Farida lunged forward. Aisha gasped as her stepmother's hand shot out, snatching at the letter. The paper crumpled between their grasp as they struggled. "You ungrateful little rat!" Farida hissed, trying to tear it from Aisha's hands. "No!" Aisha clung to it desperately, twisting away, her heart racing. If she lost this, she lost everything. Rida and Saira watched in stunned silence as their mother wrestled with the girl they had always considered weak. But Aisha was no longer weak. With a burst of strength she didn't know she had, she shoved Farida back. Her stepmother stumbled, her eyes wide with shock. Breathing heavily, Aisha clutched the letter to her chest. "I'm not your servant. I never was." Farida's face twisted with rage, but Aisha didn't wait for another attack. She turned and ran, pushing open the door and disappearing into the night. For the first time in her life, she was free. The cold night air wrapped around Aisha as she ran, her heart pounding with fear and determination. She didn't look back. She couldn't. The grand house that had imprisoned her for years was now behind her, and for the first time, she was stepping into the unknown. Not as a servant, but as someone reclaiming her stolen life. But freedom came with its own challenges. She had no real plan, only a name. Ibrahim Dar, a man her father had trusted, someone who might hold the key to everything Farida had hidden from her. But where was he? And would he even believe her? Aisha's footsteps slowed as she reached the edge of town. The streets were quiet, the market stalls empty, their owners long gone for the night. She hadn't thought this far ahead. She had no money, no place to stay, and no idea where to find the man she sought. She pulled her shawl tighter around her shoulders, exhaustion creeping in. A part of her wanted to stop, to rest, but she couldn't afford to waste time. If Farida sent someone after her, she wouldn't be safe for long. She wandered through the unfamiliar streets, asking strangers if they had ever heard of Ibrahim Dar. Most shook their heads, some simply ignored her. A few looked at her with suspicion, as if she were just another lost beggar girl. Doubt began to gnaw at her. Had Farida erased every trace of this man? Had she risked everything for a name that no longer meant anything? Then, just as despair threatened to overtake her, she overheard a conversation between two older men, near a tea house. Ibrahim Dar? He used to live near the old mosque, one of them said. Disappeared for years. Some say he still visits from time to time. Hope surged through her veins. It wasn't much, but it was something. Following the directions she gathered, Aisha made her way toward the mosque. The journey was long and her feet ached, but she refused to stop. Hours passed before she finally reached a quiet, worn-down house near the mosque's entrance. Her heart pounded as she stepped toward the door, her fingers hesitating before knocking. For a moment there was silence. Then, the door creaked open, revealing an older man with weary eyes and a face lined with time. Yes? His voice was cautious. Aisha took a deep breath. Are you Ibrahim Dar? The man stiffened. Who's asking? She pulled the letter from her bag, holding it up with trembling fingers. My name is Aisha Malik. My father, Rehan Malik, trusted you. For a long moment the man just stared at her. Then his expression changed, a flicker of recognition and shock crossing his face. You, he whispered. You're alive. Ibrahim Dar stared at Aisha, his weathered face a mixture of disbelief and sorrow. He reached for the letter with trembling hands, his eyes scanning the familiar handwriting of Rehan Malik. This is real, he murmured, his voice thick with emotion. He looked up at her, his gaze searching. Your father entrusted me with your safety. I thought you had been lost. Aisha's heart ached at the sadness in his voice. I was hidden away, she whispered. My stepmother, she lied to me. She made me believe I had nothing. Ibrahim nodded grimly, folding the letter carefully. I knew Farida was dangerous, but I never imagined she would go this far. He turned and gestured for her to follow him inside. The house was modest but filled with old books and legal documents, stacked in neat piles. Ibrahim led her to a wooden desk and unlocked a drawer, pulling out a thick file. He flipped through the pages before stopping at a particular document. This is your birth record, he said, showing her the paper. Your father registered you as his sole heir. Your name is on every legal document tied to the Malik estate. You were meant to inherit everything, your home, your father's wealth, and his businesses. Aisha's breath caught in her throat. She had spent years believing she was worthless, a burden. But here was proof that she had always belonged. Ibrahim's expression darkened. Farida must have hidden these papers, knowing that if you ever found out, she would lose everything. He placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. But it's not too late. We can still fight back. How? Aisha asked, her voice laced with determination. I still have contacts in the legal world, he said. We'll gather everything we need, these documents, your father's letter, and take them to the court. We'll expose what Farida has done and make sure she faces justice. The idea of confronting Farida in a courtroom sent a thrill through Aisha's veins. For years she had been powerless, but now she had something stronger than fear, the truth. Over the next few days, Ibrahim helped her prepare. He reached out to old allies, lawyers, family friends, and business partners who had once worked with her father. Many of them had suspected something was wrong, but had been unable to intervene without proof. Now, with the letter and legal documents, they had everything they needed. When the legal case was finally filed, word spread quickly. The truth about Farida's deception, her mistreatment of Aisha, and her theft of the Malik estate became public knowledge. The day of the court hearing, Aisha stood tall, no longer a frightened girl trapped in an attic, but the rightful heir to her father's legacy. Farida and her daughters, pale with fear, had no defense against the overwhelming evidence. Justice had finally come. As Aisha stepped through the grand entrance of the Malik estate, a flood of emotions washed over her. The house, once a place of confinement and cruelty, now stood before her as a symbol of victory, justice, and a new beginning. For years she had scrubbed these floors, dusted these chandeliers, and served the very people who had stolen her birthright. But now the house was truly hers. Ibrahim Dar stood beside her, watching with a knowing smile. "Welcome home, Aisha," he said warmly. The words felt surreal. Home. A place where she was not a servant, not an outcast, but the rightful owner. The staff, who had once ignored her under Farida's rule, now stood respectfully, waiting for her instructions. Some even offered quiet smiles, as if silently acknowledging that justice had finally been served. For the first time, Aisha experienced kindness without condition. The lawyers who had fought for her, the family friends who had stepped forward to support her, even the once indifferent servants, they all treated her with respect, not as a forgotten orphan but as the daughter of Rehan Malik. Her days were no longer filled with endless chores and cruel insults. Instead, she spent time learning about her father's businesses, rediscovering the parts of her past that Farida had stolen. She walked through the gardens freely, read books without fear of punishment, and ate at the dining table as an equal, not a servant. Yet, as she embraced her new life, one question remained. What should she do with Farida and her daughters? After the court's ruling, they had been stripped of everything. The wealth they had once flaunted was gone, and they were forced to leave the estate. Aisha had the power to ensure they never recovered, to cast them into the same suffering they had forced upon her. But did she want that? One evening, as she sat in her father's old study, Ibrahim approached her. "I know what you're thinking," he said gently. "Revenge is tempting, but true strength is in choosing what kind of person you want to be." Aisha nodded slowly. She had suffered more than anyone should, but she had also survived. She was free. She was loved. That was more than Farida and her daughters could ever take from her. The next day, Aisha made her decision. She would not seek further punishment for them. The law had already taken its course, and their suffering was now their own doing. She would not waste another moment of her life on them. Instead, she focused on her future. She restored the Malik estate to its former glory, opened its doors to those in need, and vowed that no child under her roof would ever suffer as she had. Aisha had been broken, but she had rebuilt herself. And now she was not just surviving, she was truly living. Aisha stood on the balcony of the Malik estate, gazing at the horizon as the golden hues of the setting sun bathed the land in warmth. The wind brushed against her face, carrying whispers of the past, but she no longer felt trapped by it. She had come so far, from a girl who had been told she was nothing to a woman who had reclaimed everything stolen from her. She had endured years of cruelty, loneliness, and injustice, yet she had never lost the spark of hope inside her. That hope had guided her through the darkness, and now, standing here, she knew she had won, not just against her stepfamily, but against the fear and doubt they had planted within her. She thought about the girl she used to be, the one who had scrubbed floors, swallowed insults, and dreamed of a better life in secret. That girl had been afraid to speak up, afraid to believe she deserved more. But she had also been strong. She had survived. And in doing so, she had proven to herself that she was never truly powerless. Resilience had been her greatest weapon. She had fought for the truth, faced every obstacle, and refused to let her circumstances define her. She had learned that courage wasn't the absence of fear. It was the decision to move forward despite it. She turned as Ibrahim Dar approached. "Lost in thought?" he asked with a knowing smile. Aisha nodded. "Just thinking about everything, about how different life is now." He studied her for a moment. "You earned this, Aisha. Not just the house, the wealth, or the justice. You earned the right to live freely, to choose your own path." She smiled. It was true. For so long, others had dictated her fate, but not anymore. Now she had the power to shape her own future. She had already decided how she wanted to use her newfound position. The Malik estate would not just be a home for her. It would be a refuge for those in need. She would open its doors to girls who had been abandoned or mistreated, giving them the safety, education, and love she had once longed for. No one would feel as alone as she once had. Looking back, she realized that every hardship, every moment of despair, had led her to this point. She had not just survived, she had grown. Her journey was far from over, but now she walked forward with confidence. As the last rays of sunlight faded into the horizon, Aisha took a deep breath. She had found her strength, her voice, and her place in the world. This was not just an ending, it was a beginning. A story of survival, justice, and hope. And as she stepped back inside her home, she knew without a doubt that her future was hers to create.